Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. My name's Elizabeth and today I'm going to be doing a full-length review on Bird Box by Josh Malerman. So, Bird Box. I guess we'll start with what Bird Box is about. So, Bird Box is about Mallory, and it's set in two storylines. So the first is set in the present day, and so she lives with her two children in this house, and they have been in this house for the past 4 years and barely go outside. And when they do, they have to wear a blindfold because of these creatures that live there. And if anybody looks at these creatures, they go crazy and then try to murder someone before they end up murdering themselves. And then the second storyline is set 4 years ago when the events started, and Mallory's living with her sister when this happens. And every time they go out, they wear these blindfolds because they're terrified. It's basically, the way I pictured it, is kind of like this zombie apocalypse, except the zombies are these creatures that you can't look at or you will go crazy and kill yourself. So it's very interesting to begin with because we get to see how it all started. And so Mallory decides to go, they hear this call from these people who say, "We are a safe house if you want to come live with us. We are helping each other in this time." And she decides to go to this house, and that's kind of where the story really begins, is when she goes to this house and meets these people. That's pretty much how it starts. And it's very, like, the characters were fantastically written. Like, I actually listened to this on audiobook, and whoever read it, let me see, I think it was Cassandra Campbell. She was fantastic narrating this audiobook, and I highly recommend it. She did great with all of the different characters' voices, which is something that I'm really picky about in audiobooks, because I need to hear the different voices portrayed differently, obviously. But she does a fantastic job of this. But aside from the audiobook, the characters themselves are written fantastically. Each character sounds different. They speak differently. They have different views. They have different opinions on what's happening in the outside world, but they all come together into this one house, under this one roof, and they create a system to live together. And I loved it. And we're set, so basically all you know is Mallory is still living in this house 4 years later, but she lives there alone with her two children. And so you know something has happened, you don't know what, but these other characters are no longer living in this house with her. So you know that's happening, and I am panicking the whole time because I know something's gonna happen, I don't know what. But then in the future, like in the present really, when it starts out, literally the first chapter of this book, it starts out, Mallory says, "We have to leave the house." So after 4 years of living in this house, they leave. You don't know why they're leaving. You don't know where they're going. You don't know what's going to happen. And I can honestly say, this book filled me with so much anxiety. My nerves were shot the whole time, and it was fantastic. And I honestly cannot say I have ever read a book that made me feel this way while reading it. I'm now going to go into spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled for this book, I highly recommend that you go and read it first and then come back and watch this video, because this book is fantastic. You should go read it. Okay, bye. Let's start with Mallory. Mallory lives with her sister, and she doesn't really believe what's going on. Like, she doesn't really believe. She thinks people are overreacting to what's going on until her sister is putting blankets over the windows, blocking out the outside world, and afraid to go outside. And then she's like, okay, maybe this is real. Maybe this is something. And in the same chapter, in the same time period, she finds out that she is pregnant. So she finds out that she's pregnant, and then all hell breaks loose in the world, and you can't go outside, and there's like, everyone is murdering people and killing themselves because they've seen these creatures. So there's no doctors there. I mean, there's nobody to help. And they hear this, like, they get a phone call, or I think they may have heard it on the radio. I can't exactly remember how they hear it at first. But her and her sister hear the message from these other people saying, we have created a safe house. You should come and live with us together. We're going to get through this together. And they obviously, they don't go at first because her and her sister are kind of together. But then her sister ends up looking out the window and she hangs herself in the bathroom. And at this point, Mallory's like, oh shit, what am I going to do? I can't do this on my own. I'm pregnant. And at this point, I think she was 2 months pregnant maybe. She's like, okay, I'm going to go to the house. And this is a little terrifying because she has to drive there. And in order to drive there, you have to be able to see where you're going. So you can't be blindfolded, obviously. So she's driving there, and it is terrifying the whole time. But she makes it there. And then when she gets in the house, they are very skeptical. As it turns out, the man, the owner of the house, videotaped outside a window for 5 hours to see if you could look at one of the creatures through the lens of a camera and not be affected. Well, it turns out he was wrong, and he kills himself. So Tom is kind of like the leader, and I loved Tom, and when he died, I was so sad. It was just the death scene. Okay, let's back up. Hold on. So then there's like the majority of the book is them in this house. And they go out a few times, which is so nerve-wracking in itself, as they have to go out and you don't know if they're going to come back, because in the present they're not there, so you don't know if they're going to come back. But they go out to get dogs the first time because they think, well, maybe animals aren't affected, so they go get dogs to kind of be their eyes for them. And so they come back from that. That is awesome. They have the dogs. They go out to get water a few times. That's terrifying. But everything seems okay. Everything seems to be working. The main issue at this point is that they are beginning to run out of food. The story really picks up when Gary comes to the house. Now, Gary seems to be pretty normal. He tells the story of that he was living in this house, and the owner of that house kind of went crazy, was talking about how everyone was wrong. They were just not strong enough, and that you should just look at these creatures and just know that you're strong enough and you'll be fine. And everyone kind of believes him. They bring him in until Mallory gets suspicious and finds his journal in his bag. And it turns out that the man that he was talking about was actually him, and they kick him out. And then it goes crazy. So come back to the present. Mallory and her 2 children, who at this point she just calls boy and girl. They don't have names, which I thought was really unique, because when we do find out their names at the very end, it's pretty awesome. Like, it's very satisfying when you finally do find out their names. But for the entire book in the present, they are in a rowboat on this river behind the house. And we find out that their goal is to get to where the river branches off, and she has to open her eyes to see which canal to take and trigger this trap so that these people can come and rescue them. And I thought that was very unique. And leading up to her having to actually open her eyes and look, I thought it was a little too, like, it was solved too easily because there was a creature there, like, playing with her mask, and she was afraid he was going to take it off and forced her to look at him. But at the end, he just kind of backed off and walked away and let her go. And to me, that was a little too easy. I would have liked to see a little bit more from that. So that was one little aspect that I would have liked to have seen more reaction from. So go back to the past. We're at the end, and Mallory goes into labor, as well as Olivia. They go into labor at the same time. And this is very traumatic for both of them, but the house comes together, takes them up to the attic, and they're going through labor together. But then chaos ensues downstairs, and Tom has to, okay, it's okay, I'm gonna go down, see what's going on, I'll come back. We have no idea what's going on downstairs. All we know is that it's crazy. There's people screaming, there's like people are banging on walls and arguing. But then Gary appears in the attic, and this scene is my least favorite of the whole book. Not the aftermath. The aftermath of the scene was fantastic. It was heartbreaking and it tore me to pieces, but this scene, the actual labor scene, it could have been more exciting. And like, I thought it really slowed down the pace. I thought if this pace was a little faster, if a little more was happening, and we didn't have to pause for these conversations, it would have really improved the scene overall. But again, this scene is a tiny part of the book, and what happens after it is just, like, I don't even know how to talk about it. But Gary basically talks about how he has looked at these creatures. He can look at them and he's not crazy. I think he's just a different kind of crazy. But he talks about how Tom and Dan walked right past his tent, but they were blindfolded. He talks about how he's been watching them the whole time until he decided to go in the house and actually meet them. And he tries to get Mallory and Olivia to look at the creature. Olivia does. She kills herself by jumping out of the attic window, but Mallory ends up with her child and Olivia's child, and that's where the two children come from. So after this birth scene, Gary and the creature leave the house. Mallory goes downstairs because the phone is ringing, and she answers the phone, and it's from this man who lives in a school for the blind. And he says, we have created our own little world right here. We grow our own food. We have livestock. We're happy. You can live with us. And she says she can't. She just had birth, or just gave birth, obviously. So she can't really travel. And she's completely in shock. She has, like, she knows something has happened. She doesn't know what. But basically, she has to figure out what she's going to do and how she would get there. So he gives her directions and says, we will be here no matter how long it takes you to get here. We will be here. And little does he know that it's going to take her 4 years to get there. But we go to the end of the book. We're back in the present, and she has to open her eyes. And like I said, the creature leaves, lets her open her eyes in peace. She doesn't have to look. They trigger the trap. She closes her eyes. They come to find her, and they take her to this school for the blind, and they find out that almost everyone that lives there is blind, and that's why they're fine. And at this point, I was thinking, I was like, why has no one thought of this? If everyone is so terrified of looking at these creatures that they don't leave their house, like, I'm not saying that they should have, but I don't know why more people didn't just blind themselves, right? Like, there could have been more, I think. But overall, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I highly, highly enjoyed it. I loved the audiobook. It was fantastic. Definitely recommend it. If you haven't read it, or you're not sure you want to read it, check out the audiobook. I loved the audiobook, if you haven't figured that out. That is it for my review. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more review videos from me, be sure to subscribe or hit that little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I am on social media. I will leave all my links down below for you guys. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Bye!